Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. There's so much talk at the moment around instant gratification. You know, one of the biggest examples I've seen recently on this is pre-Black Friday deals that are all over the internet and on the high street. I mean, can we not even wait for Black Friday anymore, that we need a sale before Black Friday? We are indeed living in crazy times. But enough of my grumpy old man rants. Let's get back to the tech. I recently discovered a company called Netsil that just launched out of stealth on September the 19th. And simply put, they're offering a universal observability and monitoring platform for modern cloud applications, also known as Google Maps for cloud apps. Now, as a man that has frequented the world of change management, I know all too well about the dangers of using tons of apps and microservices, and all those apps and microservices actually create dependencies between each other and the underlying technology infrastructure, which is usually why anybody that works in an IT department will tell you stories of how when one person makes a change, it will stop working and no one knows how to put it back together again. But hey, that's what change management's there to fix, right? So the fact that any number of small changes to one app can have unintended impacts on other apps proves that there's a need for doing things differently. Now, Netsil's product listens to the activity going on inside a company's computer environment and provides IT teams with an auto-discovered map of those interactions so they can quickly see how every app is actually performing. Now, I know regular listener James Hill will be particularly interested in today's episode, along with anyone that promotes a proactive rather than reactive approach to IT. So buckle up and hold on tight as I invite you to let me beam your ears all the way to San Francisco so we can speak with Harjot Gill from Netsil. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone who is listening today a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks Neil for inviting me. So I'm Harjot Gill. I'm CEO of Netsil, which is a young new startup in microservices observability space. And we just recently launched last month. And what we are bringing to market is very kind of a unique kind of a solution that kind of renders Google Maps for modern cloud applications. And the whole idea here is to empower modern operations teams so that they can run these microservices in a very reliable and performant manner. That's kind of the background of what we do.
Now, Netsil launched out of stealth on September the 19th, I believe, and it's my understanding that you're offering a monitoring platform for modern cloud applications. And you've also been termed the Google Maps for your cloud apps. But can you offer an overview of what Netsil is and also what makes your solution different from all those other solutions out there?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, so we launched last month and the launch went really well. And a lot of our market is coming from the early Kubernetes adopters. So the thing that we are offering to these practitioners, and this product is being marketed as Google Maps for modern cloud apps. As you know, modern applications are becoming highly distributed, and a lot of the complexity is of a different kind. Like earlier, a decade back, a lot of complexity would be in your monolithic architectures. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that term, but in modern applications, what we are seeing is that a lot of complexity is in the network when these services are talking to each other. And what we are doing is, I don't know whether the listeners have noticed this already or not, but Netsil is listen spelled backwards. And essentially what we are doing, which makes us so different from other approaches on the market, is that we are listening to these network interactions in this modern application distributed setting and using those events as a source of truth to render traffic maps of cloud apps so that operators can understand the relationships and understand also the KPIs, the key performance indicators on each and every service.
Now, I must admit, before I invited you on, I couldn't help but notice that Netsil is listen spelt backwards. I mean, whose idea was that? I think it's a stroke of genius for what you guys are doing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, great. I mean, we actually got a consultant called Steve Cecil. I mean, he's pretty awesome with naming thing, and he did his exercise where he kind of involved the entire team to come up with this interesting name. and basically we're listening to from the network, so then hence the name Netsil. And I think we and our customers definitely remember it and we love it.
Fantastic. So I've got to ask, how did your story begin and how did you meet your co-founder? And also, what was the inspiration behind Netsil?
Yeah, so very interestingly, so Netsil has three co-founders, but very interestingly, this startup came out of the research that we were doing at University of Pennsylvania. So I was doing my PhD along with my brother at University of Pennsylvania, where we had this like cool technology which could basically process information at high volume at low latency. So we applied it to packets. And literally, like we were like a solution looking for a problem all the time. So we were like NSF funded initially. Like we thought when we were bootstrapping, we got this government grant to like look at cybersecurity or something. Then after we started talking to a lot of customers, we realized that this interesting movement in the application architectures was happening at the same simultaneously in the way the apps were being architected from monolithic to microservices, and around the same time this containerization being led by Docker and Kubernetes was taking off. So we saw an opportunity in that space and we kind of moved the solution up the stack. And around that time, I also met my another co-founder, Sharik Rizvi, who comes from Twitter. So we all joined hands. So you can think of like Netsil as a collaboration between like academic research and industry practitioners. And Sharik's background is like he was running like an engineering team at Twitter and previously at Google, where he had firsthand experienced this change in application architectures or this transformation from monolithic to web scale microservices architecture. For instance, like at Twitter, I mean, he was one of the early users of the Google Board project that is now Kubernetes. And at Twitter, he had seen like rise of platforms such as Mesos and Zipkin and so on. So he naturally got pulled into our idea. And we thought that, hey, we could actually apply this technology to make the mainstream enterprises, be successful with microservices. And that's kind of the genesis.
Now, considering the actual scale and complexity of modern applications, it really does feel like it's never been more important to address those operational issues that we alluded to earlier. And by that, I mean things like monitoring, deployment management, incident response, all with higher levels of automation. I mean, are businesses waking up to this yet? And how are your clients actually facing up to that complexity of their own infrastructure?
Yeah, definitely. Like, most enterprises would now want to catch up with like more nimbler players. So they all want to be agile, and hence they're like adopting all this like multi-cloud and containers and so on. So this movement is going mainstream. But one of the things these orgs are realizing that the culture required to operate these microservices looks very different than what they had been used to in the past. So even the job roles are evolving. So we are seeing like new personas emerge in the industry to address some of these complexities. So you might have heard this term called site reliability engineers, which are now being hired even in the mainstream enterprises. And then you would see like companies like Airbnb, which are hiring observability teams. So teams dedicated to like solve observability challenges. So in a way, like these modern applications, like the complexity is of a different kind. Like earlier, like a decade back, when companies like New Relic and App Dynamics and so on emerged on the market, they had solutions that worked really well for complex enterprise Java applications. But now the complexity looks very, very different. And one of the things we realized by working with the customers is that everything boils down to something called an OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. And every enterprise wants to like speed up this OODA loop. So the faster your OODA loop is, the faster you can deploy, the faster you can do incident response, the faster you can do your capacity planning and so on. So every operator is going through this OODA loop continuously, right?
Yeah.
And what we have realized is that with the rise of these modern cloud platforms, the act at the top, at the end of the OODA loop has been taken care of. I mean, we pretty much nailed it recently in the last 5 years or so, where you have something like, once you have something like Kubernetes or containers, you can like run a few commands and make massive changes to your cloud application, like with just a few clicks. I mean, it wasn't possible in the past. Now, interestingly, what has slowed down enterprises to achieve their goals, the business objectives to go towards more agility, is the rest of the OODA loop. The observe and the orient started becoming a big bottleneck because the complexity they were handling in these environments were very different. So enterprises are definitely waking up to it. They understand the complexity. They're hiring new talent, or like they're up-leveling their current teams to understand the new complexity, and they're bringing in tools like Netsil to be more successful with this movement. Otherwise, they will like fear being left behind by more modern, I would say, faster-moving startups and get disrupted.
Absolutely. And DevOps teams also are responsible for uptime and performance of applications now, but they often cannot see the services or even the service dependencies. I mean, is this one of the biggest blind spots in IT now? And If it is, I mean, do you think it seldom gets the attention it deserves?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when these enterprises like migrate to newer architectures, that's when they realize that the biggest hurdle in adoption and like mainstream widespread uses in their own org for these modern platforms is a dependency map. Let's say you are doing any kind of an incident response on these like modern environments, and the first question is which downstream service is faulty. So I'll give you some examples. Now at Twitter, when you're like tweeting, each tweet today hits around 45 microservices. That's the level of decomposition web scale companies have achieved. So when you are requesting, you are tweeting, your request basically hits like 45 services. It fans out internally to large number of services. You're basically like passing the token around in the back end. So in terms of the DevOps, which they're doing in kind of like incident response in these environments, the first question is like which downstream or upstream service is faulty, right? So in order to be effective with that, they need a map of the application. So all the incumbents and most of the tools that existed on the market would present dashboards. And one of the things we realized, in order to be successful in microservices, dashboards kind of hit a wall. I mean, it's not a great interface. It's not the right representation of their complex environments. So almost like you earlier had Google search where you could like ask questions of that's what like dashboards look like. What we feel is that the timing in the market was right to build Google Maps for cloud apps. So if you remember, like Splunk used to be this Google search for your data center. And now the complexity has reached a level where you need a different representation to understand and do incident response.
Wow, I've got a whole new level of respect for the humble tweet now. I had no idea it goes through that many services.
Yeah, it's kind of like modularization. Like it's like true with every other branch of engineering. Like the way you scale things is to first modularize and break things down into smaller, simpler components.
I mean, do you think that the proliferation of microservices make it so much harder now to monitor and debug applications?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the current approaches, they were designed for an era when this complexity was of a different kind. Now that the complexity is like a lot more between the interplay of this communication between components, so it has become like a big pain point in the industry, and hence new breed of startups like Netsil are rising up to address this challenge. There are other startups who are like taking other technology approaches, but Netsil is like bringing in its own take on the market. And the market is like evolving very fast, and we'll see in like a few years or something like where it actually heads.
So what's next for Netsil? Is there anything else that you can share with us today?
Sure, definitely. So Netsil is right now like our focus has been like these containers and microservices. And in terms of our roadmap, like we have like a great V1 of the product, the version 1, where customers are able to use our freestyle analytics and mapping functionality to do all kinds of workflows. But we're taking it to the next level in the next quarter by adding some of the machine learning and AI technologies, like so that we can bring attention to interesting data points because we're collecting like vast amounts of data. So we do want to like bring insights and attention to like interesting data points. And the second thing is also like making the system smarter when it comes to alerting on anomalies and outliers and so on. So we have like an interesting roadmap. And another thing we are doing is like, because now we are out of stealth, we are going to like a bunch of events in this space. So the next Netsil will be appearing at Amazon reInvent. We have a booth over there, so definitely would ask the listeners to stop by if they are at Amazon reInvent in Las Vegas in a few weeks. And then after that, we are at KubeCon, which is a Kubernetes conference in Austin, Texas, in mid-December, and we also have a booth over there.
Fantastic. And can I also ask where anyone listening could stay in touch with the latest developments at Netsil, and also ask your team any questions about our conversation today?
Yeah, definitely. Like our website is like www.netsil.com, and over there you can do a bunch of things. You can subscribe to our newsletter where we kind of have amazing content. We do a lot of blogging. If you're interested in like learning more about microservices and what we do in the space, we do publish a lot of interesting articles. And the second thing is we also have a free version of the product that you can just sign up and play around with it. If you already have any kind of a cloud environment, it's just super easy to set up and get going. And if you want to like reach out to us and have a conversation with our team, you can actually always email us at hello@netsil.com, HELLO, hello@netsil.com.
Excellent. Well, a huge thank you for coming on the show today. In a former life, I did dabble in the world of change management, and I have seen what happens when somebody makes that tiny change with minimal risk or no risk that you're assured at the CAB meeting there, only for the whole world to come crashing down because nobody's got that visibility that you guys are offering. And I think it's a fantastic thing. So thanks for coming on today.
That's great. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for inviting. Nice talking.
I love the story behind Netsil, which was born at the University of Pennsylvania, where the CEO was getting his PhD. And there he hooked up with the other co-founder, the high-ranking engineer at Twitter, who was having a tough time keeping all of Twitter apps and microservices running. Now, together they realised that what IT and DevOps teams needed was a map of their cloud app environments, and the rest is history. I'm fascinated by how the universe gives us all that gentle nudge in the right direction and the great things that are created because of it. I must admit, if I think about it too much, it makes my head hurt, but I think it's a great story and a real pleasure having him on the show today. But what are your thoughts? You know where to find me by now. You can get me on Twitter at Neil C. Hughes or email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com and keep those pictures coming in of where you listen to the show. Love to see them. Like I say, you guys are my eyes. So I'm fascinated by what your commute looks like and how it differs throughout all the listeners. Scattered across 157 countries, no less, at the moment, which is it's a fantastic thing to see. And I'll share them with you all as well. But that's it, I'm afraid, for today's episode. So a huge thank you for taking the time to tune in, and hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. But until then, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.